Hello and welcome to a special episode of the Athletic NBA Show. I'm Dave DeFore, joined by my buddies Joe Varden, who you can't see if you're watching on YouTube. He's audio only, and Will Guillory. Both of these guys have been out in Las Vegas covering Team USA's minicamp. Will, I think they sent you home, and somehow Joe Varden gets sent to Spain. And we're talking to him from the United Lounge. I don't know how Joe got that deal. Love Joe. I mean, listen, everybody loves Joe.
Well, it's good to be on. I mean, I'm looking at the skyline, the New York skyline here from the Newark Airport United Lounge. So not a bad view. I think it's better that I not be seen anyway.
Well, yeah, heard better than seen.
That's right.
Well, guys, let's jump right into it. Team USA biggest story was that they lost a couple scrimmages, but the big news to come out of camp was that everyone felt like Jaren Jackson was sort of the standout guy from the camp. Defensive Player of the Year guy, going into FIBA, no 3 seconds in the paint defensively. Is he just going to terrorize the rest of the world?
If he's on the court.
That's kind of the trick with him, right? Like the foul trouble, only 5 fouls in international play. So, I mean, I guess with the 5 fouls being a potential issue, but no 3 seconds, I mean, he could still have high impact even in only 20 minutes. Because remember, it's only a 40-minute game.
Yeah, I mean, because it can kind of go both ways for Jaren, because you can also say the international game is a little bit more physical. They'll allow him to be a little bit more handsy, especially he's a guy who can defend on the perimeter. So if you switch him out on the smaller guys, he can get away with certain things that he doesn't get away with in the NBA. But I think you saw in that Puerto Rico game that his shot blocking is going to be huge for this team. Just his ability to block shots with both hands. He times it so well at the rim. I think his defensive abilities can really stand out in an international game. And I think offensively, we saw him really make some improvements last year with the Grizzlies that I think I saw a little bit during my time in Vegas, where his ability to roll and just have touch around the rim, I think is going to be big for what having guys like Halliburton and Jalen Brunson at the point guard who can get him easier shots. So yeah, you can really see him being a huge part of this team's success.
And Joe, international basketball is kind of an inside-out game. Is Jaren going to be as useful offensively, stretching the floor? I mean, it seems like having a post presence would be important for Team USA. Is he going to be able to provide any of that when he's playing the 5?
Well, I mean, I know that he certainly intends to, and they love him for that very reason, that he's a guy that they could throw the ball into. It's something that Team USA, they don't feel like they've had in a while. But we got to go back to the fouls thing for a minute. I mean, he led the NBA in fouls at like 3.58 per game or something like that. And as we know, as you've said, it's a 6 in the NBA. It's a 6 foul game. In FIBA, it's only 5. But when I was talking about this with him the other day, he made the point that he picks up a bunch of fouls too with the ball in his hands. That he gets called for charges, he gets called for those kinds of things, because he uses possessions with the Grizzlies. And I think that is where he needs to be careful. He is a stretch 5. Well, I mean, he's a 4, but for the USA, he's going to play the 5. And he does shoot threes. He'll certainly get the opportunity to do that. But he needs to be careful leaning into the defender with the ball in his hands. He likes to take that angle towards the rim where he is the other side, like he's beyond vertical. He's leaning towards the rim, and he's got to be careful there because, again, if you only have 5 to work with and he's going to be chasing the shots that he's chasing, he needs all 5 of those fouls on the defensive end. And against Puerto Rico, he had already had 3 fouls. By like the 8:30 mark of the third period, against a better team that puts them in trouble. So they're going to use him offensively. He gives them things that Team USA hasn't had in a while, but he's got to be careful when he does have it.
Yeah, I mean, look, they have Greece in their group, and that's a seasoned team that, has been together for a while. They have a lot of continuity, and they're physical. So if he tries to match that physicality, I mean, there's a world in which he is in foul trouble pretty early. And if he's in foul trouble, Team USA is in big time trouble because it's not like they have a ton of guys to replace him. Will.
Yeah, I think that's the spot where you see probably the least depth on this team is at the 5 spot. Because even though Bobby Portis had like a really good game against Puerto Rico, and the fans in there were screaming Bobby the whole game, which was hilarious. But I think Bobby's a little smaller compared to some of the 5s you'll see in this tournament, and they also have Walker Kessler, who's a younger guy. Not sure you could really throw him in those big moments and really know what you're getting from him. So yeah, they're going to need Jaren Jackson to be in the game, play these big moments, be in there during these fourth quarters. And Joe's exactly right that he's got to be smart with the way he defends, because we know he jumps, on pump fakes a good bit. That gets him in trouble. Like I said, he could be a little bit handsy when he's defending smaller guys on the perimeter. So they're going to need him to be smart and be, in during those big moments, because we know this team wants to run. They want to, take risks going after steals and stuff like that, so they can get out in transition, and that's going to leave him exposed a good bit, covering the rim. So he's got to be smart with the way he's defending, because I think we saw a little bit of Paulo Banchero at the 5 as well in that Puerto Rico game. I don't know if you can get away with that against some of these experienced teams you're going to see in the FIBA tournament. So yeah, him being in the game and playing smart is going to be extremely important for this team.
I just quickly ask you guys if Jaren was the standout guy for the team, but what about you guys? Like Joe, who stood out to you in the mini camp there in Vegas?
Well, it's hard to get away from Cade Cunningham, who, as we all know, is the guy not on the team. But he was just so breathtaking with his performance in the Friday scrimmage. Steve asked Jamal Mosley, who coaches the U.S. select team that Cade's on, to use Cade as though he was Luka Doncic to get ready for the Slovenia game, which is actually coming up here on Saturday. And Cade just dominated. There wasn't anybody on the floor for Team USA who could stay in front of him. He got to the rim. He was great in the mid-range. He was moving it all over the place. Like he was running the high pick and roll with Jaren Duren and Jalen Williams, and he was awesome. So, that's not really, I mean, it is an answer to your
that's
question.
A guy who stands out. Yeah.
He was involved in camp. But when I think about this 12, Jaren's one, but then I think about the depth at the point guard position. Jalen Brunson and Tyrese Halliburton are very different, but wow, do they complement each other. And Halliburton is moving it all over the place. He had 12 assists against Puerto Rico, and then before that, he was just moving it at will against the select team, and they really like that coming off the bench. So I'm going to say very positive movement by both point guards.
I will. I want to point out, you wrote a piece that kind of answered the question that was on a lot of people's minds. I thought Cade Cunningham should have maybe made this team, and it feels a little presumptive, but we need some big guards, like you mentioned, potentially running into Luka Doncic, and this Greece team also has a couple guys who have some size, but it's a load management issue. He's had this shin issue last season. They don't really think he's quite ready to be ramped up to that type of competition. I mean, is this something that we're going to be seeing with Cade Cunningham that goes into next season, where maybe he's slated to be on a load management schedule for the year?
Yeah, I think so. I just, that's the way the NBA is trending anyway. And so I don't expect him trying to play 82 or even 75 games. I mean, I think they're going to be cautious with him as they continue this rebuild. So, when you think about him with Team USA, like he looked, I mean, he hasn't played in front of anybody who's watching, since before the surgery. So to see him look like that, you just had to wonder. But he told me that he wasn't quite ready to be fully engaged in all practice, all travel, all the time. And those 12 guys are. So in fairness to his rehab and in fairness to Team USA, he just thought that he would do the select team. But the fascinating thing is that they offered him a spot anyway. That they said, wow, that they wanted him on this team. So that it shows, I think, what they think of him in general, and then also like he's definitely got a future in red, white, and blue.
Yeah, I mean, playing for the select team is a good first step to playing in the Olympics, and I'm sure we'll see him in at least one, maybe a couple. All right, well, so who stood out to you in the camp? That's not Jaren Jackson or Cade Cunningham.
Yeah, I'm right there with Joe. And I would say not just Cade Cunningham, but I think the Cade Cunningham, Jalen Duren combo. I think you saw a lot of them running pick and roll in some of these scrimmages, and Joe saw a lot more than me. But from the little bit I saw, those two had really good chemistry, which surprised me because they didn't really play together a whole lot just because Cade missed so much time last year during, Jalen Duren's rookie season. And I think, I remember walking in the gym the first time and I kind of leaned over to Joe and I said, man, Jalen Duren is freaking huge. Like he looks so big for a young dude. And I think Dave, correct me if I'm wrong. I think he's still 19, right?
Yeah, he's young.
Just a really young dude. You can see how much he's kind of grown after 1 year in the NBA. Athletic, was making plays above the rim. I think those two guys as a combo, I'm really interested in more going into next season after watching them up close. And I think also, I don't think, not necessarily one guy, but I would say the Anthony Edwards, Mikal Bridges ability to defend on the perimeter. I think that's going to be huge for this Team USA squad, just because Bridges is just so long and Anthony Edwards brings that physicality at the point of attack. And like I said, whenever you see Team USA, they want to run, they want to get out in transition and use their athleticism. And I think that's going to be key for them to be able to do that, is those two guys creating steals, making plays in the open court. So that's what really stood out to me, is when those guys really locked in defensively in the second half against Puerto Rico, those guys really couldn't do anything. I mean, they were just racking up steals over and over again. And I think Anthony Edwards really showing that side of his game a little bit more, defending at the point of attack is going to be something I'm going to be watching.
The guard play for USA stands out to me. I mean, obviously they're a little bit weak in the front court, but the back courts that they can throw out there, it's a lot of ball handling. It's quite a bit of shooting. Halliburton, Brunson, Edwards. You've got even Brandon Ingram at the 3, who's going to be able to bring the ball up a bunch. We saw Mikal Bridges doing more stuff when he got to Brooklyn with the ball in his hands. Do you guys envision this team playing a lot of pick and roll? Is it going to be ISO heavy? Like, what style of play do you think that they're going to be playing the majority of the time?
Well, I think they're going to run. I think that is going to be the hallmark of this team, is they're going to try to move as fast as they can up and down the floor. I think that's partially why they're going a little bit smaller. Will brought it up. Pal back up 5 right now. Because I just think that's how they want to play. Like, when Steve was announced as the next Team USA coach, there was all this fun speculation about, well, that means we're going to see Warrior action. And I guess I'm holding out hope for that by the time we get to the World Cup, but it's just, they're not together enough to do anything like super fancy. So, a lot of what Team USA offense is try to score in transition, run the pick and roll, run the drag. But I mean, this is a team that is going to thrive on ball movement and breaking you down off the dribble. I mean, catch and shoot threes. Like, they don't have that one guy. Like, even the World Cup team from 19, they had Joe Harris. We on the last year's team, I mean, Durant was on the team. Booker, those guys. I mean, so this team certainly has guys who can shoot. They're all above 30%. At least the first 10 guys are. But they don't have that, I guess that ace 3-ball shooter. So, I think a lot of ISO, a lot of pick and roll, and just try to move up and down.
Well, you don't think Cam Johnson is a good enough spot up guy to scare opposing teams? I mean, he can shoot it.
Yeah, listen, I'm a North Carolina fan, so I'm riding for Cam Johnson till the death over here. But I think Joe's exactly right. They're going to want to run a lot, and that's going to be the key to their success. But I think when they do have to play half-court basketball, I think it's going to be a lot on Jalen Brunson and Tyrese Halliburton, running pick and roll, creating shots for guys. And I think you saw that a lot with Halliburton. Something that stood out for me just watching them a couple of times is just Halliburton seems to just see the game at a pace that's just different from everybody else, where he's able to see guys open just a beat quicker, and he makes those quick plays and transition kick ahead passes. You saw a couple times he'll run a pick and roll and find guys with no look passes wide open under the rim. I think knowing the way Steve Kerr operates in Golden State, I think when he sees the things kind of stagnate, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a good bit of Brunson and Halliburton together. Those guys being able to attack both sides of the court, really break down defenses, get into the teeth, and swing that thing around. Because that's something we saw, at one of those practices, Steve Kerr really emphasized, hey, we got to swing the ball around. We got to move it. We got to play together. And Joe noticed this a couple times during one practice where they had like 4 or 5 plays where it would be swing, 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 open 3 in the corner. And we know that's Steve Kerr basketball right there. So I think that's something they're going to want to see more. And they're going to have those guards in there who can get into the paint and start those actions where they can't create it naturally with like split actions where the Warriors are so good at doing that. They want to just be able to have guys go downhill, swing, and get some of those open shots.
I mean, relying on athleticism it's been one of the hallmarks of Team USA and international basketball. And, transition offense is popular in FIBA. I mean, a lot of teams do this. It's not just Team USA. You mentioned Jalen Brunson. I mean, getting 2 feet into the paint is going to be huge, and that's sort of his game. Josh Hart just signed a new contract. I mean, you guys got a chance to talk to him. I know they kind of held him out until he got the deal done. Joe, is he going to be their guard stopper? What is he going to play a little bit of 4? What's he going to do for them?
Yeah, that's the one I'm trying to figure out. He played quite a bit in scrimmages, so I don't want to say that we haven't seen him. We did. But when you saw how they played against Puerto Rico, especially in the positions that he plays, we've already been over the 2 point guards, and then the 2 shooting guards. Well, one is Anthony Edwards, and he's one of their most important players as a dynamic scorer. And then they are borderline obsessed with Austin Reaves.
No doubt.
I'm going to get to Austin Reaves. Don't worry. I'm saving him for later.
All right. Well, then I'll just say, and for good reason. So you mentioned, like, can he play some forward? I mean, sure. Mikal Bridges, they love him. He's going to play a bunch. So maybe he takes Will's boys minutes, like some of the Cam Johnson minutes. But I mean, Cam's a lot bigger. And
shoots it better.
He shoots a little bit better. So it's hard, but I mean, he is the more disciplined version of Marcus Smart when Marcus was on this team in 19. And going back to the top when we were talking about the Jaren Jackson winning the straw poll. Josh Hart was one of the multiple vote getters. He was mentioned a few times just for the sort of the way he had carried himself. So if he's made that kind of impact on his teammates, and then if you mentioned my story today about Josh sitting out because of the contract extension with the Knicks, Steve told me like he's going to play a big role in this team. So maybe we can't see it yet, but if Steve's saying that, then there's going to be something that he does in a critical moment.
I'm not sure if anybody's having a better day than Josh Hart. He just signed a big contract extension, and he's going to Spain for a little bit. That's that's pretty good. Now, Will, your guy. Now, I wasn't thinking Cam Johnson when Joe said that. I'm thinking BI, Brandon Ingram. I mean, this could be huge for him in some small ball lineups. He could be a 4. You could even see him playing 2 if they want to play a little tall ball and have him out there. His ball handling is obviously going to be crucial for this team, and his shooting. Is he going to be sort of the everything, the Swiss Army knife player for them?
Yeah, that's certainly what they need from him. And I think talking to him while I was out there, I think that's something that he wants to show his ability just to, check a whole lot of boxes for this team, where in New Orleans, he's a primary creator. We know he's a scorer. He's improved a lot with his passing over the years. And that's something that Steve Kerr talked about after the Puerto Rico game. But I think, being able to make plays defensively, shoot some corner threes. I talked to, Joe and Tim Bontemps during the game about, man, I haven't seen Brandon Ingram shoot this many corner threes in one game and forever, just because they have all of this ball handling around him. It's going to be much different than what we're used to seeing from him in New Orleans, and I think that's something that he wants to embrace. being able to do a lot of different things to contribute to winning. And I think it's important for him in particular just to be a little bit better defensively, to be more attentive, to be there when the ball gets there instead of reacting a lot of the times, which I think is maybe his biggest weakness on defense. A lot of times he's a beat slow in his reactions, and I think you saw in that Puerto Rico game he had a couple of blocks where he was getting there early, and I think that's going to be huge for this team, just having his length out there next to Jaren Jackson, like I said, because they're going to have a lot on his plate as far as protecting the rim. So I think this is really important, summer for BI, just to be on the court with guys like Anthony Edwards and Mikal Bridges, and to really show that he can separate himself and be a notch above some of those guys potentially. And I think, Anthony Edwards obviously has that potential, but I think BI also has that potential to be the guy on this team if he's playing, the way we saw at the end of last season with the Pelicans. It's just a matter of him, doing things a little bit differently than we're used to seeing from him.
Yeah, it's a super young team, and I'm sure all these teams, that these players play for are hoping for the Team USA bump for just about everybody. Look, if Josh Hart's having the best day of anybody, Austin Reaves has had like the best half a year of just about anybody, from a second round pick to becoming a starter for the Lakers in the playoffs, and now he's on Team USA. Is he a point guard? Is that what's happening, Joe? Like, are we watching Austin Reaves? Is he going to take over the show by the end of this thing?
Well, I need to add a couple more things. First of all,
by all means.
In addition to Team USA, he's also now 4 years and $56 million richer. So he got that back from the Lakers. Not too bad there. And I guess he also he's shot a 68 on the golf course. He is a scratch golfer. So I didn't know that until this week. So,
and he's got to lead the league in LeBron tweets too. I mean, who does LeBron tweet about more than Austin Reaves?
That's right. So he's, like I said, they are enamored with him. There's no doubt about it. Point guard, Will and I saw this and we commented on it at the time, like there are moments where Steve in these scrimmages plays the 2 point guards together, but then he rotates them both out at the same time when he does that. And then Austin Reaves becomes the de facto point guard. So he certainly has like sort of the ranking now is like the third ball handler on this team. He had 4 assists against Puerto Rico. They love that he can create his own shot and that he can also catch and shoot too, which he was able to do on a couple from Halliburton in the first half. So dynamic player. I don't know if I can call him a point guard yet, but he's going to fill a ton of roles for this team.
What do you think, Will? Do you think that they're going to keep the same starting lineup for the entire run, or do you think they're going to tinker a little bit?
I think so, just because I think, like I said, I like the defensive potential they have out there with Ant, Mikal, and BI just covering so much, area on the perimeter, and then Jaren Jackson at the 5. But I do think, like Joe said, we're going to see a lot of those bench guys contributing. And I think, what surprised me coming away from camp, I was just like, hey, Austin Reaves just has to play flat out. Like, it's not even a question. If he's going to play. He's been that good, and I think he can contribute in a bunch of different areas. Obviously, his shooting is going to be really important. That's where we get back into the Cam Johnson conversation. They're going to need guys who can space the floor. But Austin Reaves just can do so much for them, and they're going to need his ball handling, his ability to make plays in transition. But I think that starting 5 is really solid. I was surprised that we didn't see Jalen Brunson take over as much, because I thought he was really good in some of the scrimmages we saw. But yeah, I think that starting group is going to be key for them, and they've got to be able to create turnovers and get out in transition. That's how this team is going to win.
Yeah, and so I guess as we're looking at the roster, is Walker Kessler the Christian Laettner of this team? Is he going to even get some run?
Well, if Jaren can't keep his hands to himself, then they're going to have to do something at that spot. But I think, he was one of the late adds to the team. They had a couple options there, but he, in FIBA rules, I can't remember if we went over this part of that. Like you mentioned, the no defensive 3 seconds, but you can also goaltend basically. Like you can stand there and you can't, if you can't block it on the way down, but as soon as the ball touches the rim, you can knock it off the rim. And Walker is a more traditional shot blocker among the young players who are out there. So he would be the guy. I wanted to add, like, kind of just in the middle of all this, as we're talking about lineups and what else we might see. This weekend's going to be very interesting for Team USA. We're in Spain in Malaga, playing 2 games on a back-to-back. The first one is against Luka Doncic in Slovenia. And I expect Steve to treat that one as a normal rotation game. But I would be shocked if he plays everybody full minutes on a back-to-back. And so I think that next one against Spain, I think you will see a different starting lineup. I think Josh Hart plays a ton in that one. Kessler gets a ton of minutes in that one. And maybe Halliburton starts, like things like that. I think they mix it up. Maybe give Jaren the night off there. Just because, Steve said the other day there's no load management in FIBA, and that's fine. But back-to-backs on a summer barnstorming tour, there's also no need for that.
Yeah. Oh, listen, and he doesn't want Jaren Jackson to get exposed trying to guard Juancho Hernan-Gomez. Let's be honest here, right? 5 of 5 from 3 the other night for Juancho. Will, is there anyone that you expect to come away from this thing as sort of a breakout guy, a guy who just stands out above the rest when World Cup's over? Let's say Team USA wins, although that's not inevitable. Absolutely not. But is there a guy that you think we're going to walk away and say, oh, he was the guy for this team?
The guy, I would still put my money on Anthony Edwards just because I think he does so much. But for me, I don't know if you could be a breakout guy if you just got paid $200 million over the summer.
That's fair.
But I think the funnest stretches we'll see with Team USA is when Halliburton's going to be on the court.
Oh yeah,
just because his ability to pass, his ability to make plays in transition. I think that's when you're going to see this team playing Steve Kerr basketball in transition. Spraying the ball on the perimeter. I think that's the guy I'm really interested in, and I think it's going to be a real tug of war between him and Jalen Brunson. Just because I think Brunson is going to be really important, when the game slows down, fourth quarters, being able to create those good shots. But I think when this team is getting up and down and getting those wings, making plays in the paint, it's going to be Halliburton out there doing a lot of that. And I think people are going to have a lot of fun watching Tyrese Halliburton create shots for these other guys.
Joe, you got anybody that you're anticipating breaking out?
Yeah, I think about Anthony Edwards, and he plays in a smaller market. Like, he's been on, in the playoffs early, like that kind of thing, like on the edge of them the last couple years. And he has that star potential. So if he becomes the leading scorer on this team, like, he really could emerge. I'm going to go a little bit counter to my guy and say that I do think Jalen Brunson could become that guy. And I think about the game against Puerto Rico, 11 points, only a couple assists, but he had 12 rebounds. And that is probably the primary weakness on this team. Jaren Jackson, as we've talked about at length, great player, not a great rebounder. And they're going to play small. And so to have a bowling ball of a point guard who can crash the boards, I think that's going to matter. And so, I think when I break out, I'm going to go Edwards, but also Jalen Brunson.
Wow. Joe, I'm extremely jealous of you right now. I love Malaga. It's a great city. Enjoy the tapas and the cava, get the dry rosé. And I cannot believe that you're going to get to watch basketball in Manila. That's on my basketball bucket list. So enjoy that experience. I can't wait to read the stories that you're going to write from there. Will, I know you're going to be writing from home, but go find a tapas place in New Orleans. You guys have good food. You can figure it out. Tapas. For Joe Varden and Will Guillory, I'm Dave DeFore, and this has been the Athletic NBA Show, Team USA versus the World, special edition. Thanks for listening.